When the mind is locked in fast, narrow beta, the world reduces to edges and problems and the self becomes a manager of emergencies. Beta is brilliant for deadlines and traffic and spreadsheets, but it is a poor architect of the unknown because it keeps attention tethered to what already is. In high beta, cortical networks prioritize prediction errors, the body broadcasts microthreats through cortisol and noradrenaline, and perception collapses into tunnel vision. Creativity suffocates not because you lack ideas, but because the nervous system is optimizing for control. Logic becomes guardrails that are mistaken for the road. The more you try to think your way out, the more beta tightens, and the brain wears a groove of sameness, replaying the past as if it were the only safe template for the future. Creation begins the moment attention unhooks from control and becomes generous again. Alpha is not laziness, it is the brain's permission slip for integration, a synchronized idling where disparate regions can talk without shouting. As alpha amplitude rises, sensory cortices de-amplify noise, the default mode and salience networks renegotiate their hierarchy, and the prefrontal cortex softens its grip just enough for patterns to self-assemble. Theta is a deeper corridor, a slow cinematic conveyor that lifts material from the implicit to the imaginable. In theta, hippocampal indexing and limbic coloration make unlikely associations legible, memory loosens and recombines, time dilates. You are not asleep, you are permeable. The boundary between me and idea thins until insight can cross without a passport. The shift is physiological before it becomes philosophical. Lengthen your exhale and the vagus nerve reads safety, heart rate variability widens, the locus coeruleus eases its noradrenergic drip, cortical arousal steps down. Breathe through the nose and the rhythm arriving at the olfactory bulb entrains frontal oscillations, count a patient 4 in, 6 to 8 out, and alpha begins to bloom like ink in water. Let the eyes rest on the horizon or close softly, shrink the pupil and the orienting reflex sleeps, open monitoring replaces target lock. With each exhale the body tells the brain, we can afford to explore. The hormonal weather listens, the immune system quietly rebalances, the gut's metronome steadies the cortex from below. Language can keep you trapped in beta because it keeps naming. Switch to sensation as your anchor, weight, temperature, pressure, sound. Feel the back of the heart, the width of the ribs, the subtle tide beneath the sternum. Map 3 layers of breath, the upper chest, the lateral ribs, the belly, without fixing anything. When attention wanders, guide it back with the tenderness you would use to guide a child crossing a street. That kindness is not sentimental, it is neuromodulatory. Harsh self-talk spikes sympathetic tone, gentleness nudges acetylcholine and GABA to do their quiet work of synchrony. Now let the mind listen for the faintest signal, not words, not goals, but a direction of warmth, curiosity, pull. This is the preverbal compass of the creative state. If beta is a narrowband radio, alpha/theta is a wideband receiver. In wideband you do not force solutions, you specify conditions. Define the feeling signature of what you intend, coherent, generous, elegant, inevitable, and hold it like a frequency rather than a sentence. The brain will search its combinatorial library for matches, hippocampal cortical loops will test microscenes, the body will report resonance as a subtle ease or expansion. When a configuration fits, you sense the click before you can explain it. Explanation can come later, for now let coherence be the criterion. The quantum language for this is simple, you are tuning state, not chasing outcomes. At small scales, possibilities exist as superpositions, at human scales, possibilities exist as competing networks. Either way, the selector is state. There is a clean way to cross the border. Sit comfortably, spine like a suspension bridge, not a rod. 2 minutes of breath coherence to prime the heart-brain loop. 3 minutes of open focus, feel space around the body, behind the eyes, between sounds. Name one intention by its quality, not its logistics. On each inhale, gather scattered attention, on each exhale, release the habit of micromanaging. After 5 minutes, Introduce a gentle auditory metronome at 6 to 8 breaths per minute or a slow drum, let it carry you. Visualize not a picture but a movement, fog parting, a lens zooming out, a door sliding open. Movement persuades subcortical systems that transition is safe. If thoughts intrude with urgency, bow to them like travelers passing through a gate. Urgency is only beta trying to reclaim the throne. As alpha stabilizes, you may feel small gamma ripples, brief, crystalline bursts when disparate maps snap into one. Do not chase them, they are byproducts of coherence, not trophies. If nothing arrives, do nothing harder. Non-doing is not passive, it is active suspension, the discipline of keeping the system unbiased so a truer attractor can emerge. The mind will try to sell you productivity theater, lists, fragments, premature outlines. Smile at the performance, then return to the field sensation, the hum in the palms, the cool air at the nostrils, the weight of the tongue. Body as anchor, breath as carrier wave, awareness as sky. When you reopen logic, invite it as a steward, not a warden. Give analytic mind a role it excels at, testing, sequencing, refining. Ask it better questions. What would make this simpler? What breaks if I remove this piece? Where is the elegance hiding? In this partnership, beta becomes a craftsperson finishing the table that alpha/theta conceived. The cycle is the creative heartbeat, descend to source, surface with form, refine without strangling. Each pass thickens myelination along a healthier loop, intention, safety, openness, insight, structure, expression. Over time, your baseline shifts. The brain trusts you to release control without abandoning responsibility. The body trusts you to listen before you push. The field answers a coherent signal faster than a frantic one. You do not need perfect silence to enter. You need permission. Permission to stop rehearsing the past long enough to let novelty dock. Permission to treat attention as a living instrument that changes timbre with breath and posture and mood. Permission to practice every day for short spans until the path is familiar. 3 minutes in the morning, 3 at noon, 3 at dusk, and 1 before sleep when theta floats closest to the shore. The measure of progress is not hours sat, but how quickly you can soften the grip when life clenches. Beta will always exist, the trick is to choose it when precision is needed and release it when possibility is. That is how logic stops being a cage and becomes a bridge, the mind's way of walking into the quantum field without dragging the past across it. Notice how control often disguises itself as responsibility. It tells you that if you do not grip every variable, chaos will bloom. But chaos is only the fear of unsupervised novelty. When you relax the supervisory reflex, the system does not collapse, it reorganizes. Networks that were overcoupled by stress decouple, background processes reappear, latent skills you forgot reveal themselves as suppressed bandwidth. You become less like a spotlight burning a hole in the moment and more like ambient daylight that lets everything be seen. In this light, solutions stop arriving as linear steps and start arriving as constellations, multiple points that make sense together only when you soften your gaze. Tension in the jaw is a small gatekeeper. Unclench it and the trigeminal pathways stop signaling alarm to midbrain centers. Let the tongue rest on the roof of the mouth, tip behind the front teeth, breathe through the nose and surf the faint cool warm contrast at the nostrils. This tiny loop is a powerful lever. Trigeminal calm promotes parasympathetic tone, nasal breath boosts nitric oxide and enhances oxygen delivery, the prefrontal cortex regains range. Add a quiet hum on the exhale, no melody, just vibration, and feel the skull resonate. That resonance nudges baroreceptors, steadies the heart, and invites alpha like a tide that knows the shoreline. Posture is neuroscience in geometry. Sit or stand as if a string lifts the crown while the tailbone grows roots. The body reads verticality as agency without aggression, and the cortex follows suit. Widen the field, sense the room behind you, above you, to your sides. Peripheral awareness downgrades the threat of the single task and turns the brain from hunter to gatherer. In this mode, attention is not a bullet, it is a net. You catch more by relaxing the mesh. 5 minutes like this before any creative or difficult conversation and you are already broadcasting a different signal, less friction, more coherence, fewer words needed. Sound is a legal cheat. A slow pulse between 50 and 70 beats per minute can entrain breathing without effort. A gentle drone around 432 to 528 Hz can act as a cradle for open focus. Not because the numbers are magical, but because the brain appreciates stable scaffolds. Use a metronome or a minimal track, not to hypnotize yourself, but to keep time while you release control. If you prefer silence, listen to the room's faintest sound, the refrigerator, distant traffic, the whisper of air. Listening without naming opens the same door, it's attention learning to rest on flow instead of objects. Movement dissolves beta's residue. Stand and sway a few centimeters side to side, letting ankles and hips speak to gravity. Add microspirals in the ribs and shoulders as if wringing out static. 2 minutes of this resets proprioception, the cerebellum updates body maps, the cortical noise floor drops. Then sit again and notice how thoughts lost their edges. If emotions are loud, give them choreography. On inhale, gather the feeling into the chest. On exhale, let it drain through the palms and soles. This is not fantasy, it's interoceptive precision training. Emotions ride physiology. When you redirect the ride, meaning follows. Hypnagogia is the friendly frontier. Right before sleep and right after waking, the gates between networks are naturally ajar. Keep a pen by the bed and a single prompt phrased as a quality, effortless solution for X, graceful next step for Y. Write it down, close your eyes, breathe slowly, and do not chase. In the morning, capture fragments before language edits them. Fragments are seeds, explanation is the soil. Plant them later in beta, but do not demand fruit at dawn. This simple pact with the edges of consciousness can outproduce hours of daytime forcing because it respects the brain's nocturnal craftsmanship. If the mind argues that all this is indulgent, give it a job it respects: measurement. Track one variable for 7 days: sleep midpoint consistency, minutes of breath coherence, number of micropauses before replying to messages, or the ratio of drafting to editing time. The analytical mind loves dashboards, give it a clean one. As metrics shift, it will concede what it cannot deny. State engineering beats willpower wrestling. Then you can let data be a servant of faith instead of a substitute for it. There is an art to holding intention without tightening. Use as if practice. Behave for 5 minutes as if the solution already exists and your job is to feel its signature. How would the body sit? What microtension would release? Which detail would stop mattering? Acting from the finished feeling recruits networks that are otherwise locked behind skepticism. The brain is not offended by rehearsal, it thrives on it. The mistake is rehearsing fear. Rehearse coherence instead, lightly, repeatedly, without bargaining. When friction appears midday, perform a 3-switch reset. Switch breath. For slow nasal inhales, 8-count hum on the exhale. Switch vision. Soften focus, widen the field until you notice the corners of the room. Switch narrative. Replace "I must figure this out" with "I am letting the field show me the next right move." Then wait for the smallest actionable nudge. Often it is not a solution but a direction. Call this person, remove that paragraph, take a walk without the phone, change one constraint. Small moves with the correct state accomplish what large moves with the wrong state cannot. Let relationships become laboratories of coherence. In conversation, listen for cadence, not just content. Match breath subtly to the other person for 30 seconds, then slow yours by a beat and watch the nervous systems co-regulate. Ask one question that aims at essence rather than detail: what would make this effortless? What are we afraid to simplify? Social synchrony is a quiet portal. 2 brains in light alpha can resolve what 2 brilliant betas will fight over for hours. Over time, the goal is not to exile beta but to appoint it. Beta is the craftsman who returns after the vision has landed, hands steady, tools sharp. Invite it to cut, sand, and join, but not to design. If it tries to surge earlier, smile and thank it for caring about integrity. Then send it for coffee while you listen. The more you practice, the faster the handoff becomes. One breath loosens the grip, one shift of gaze widens the field, one remembered sensation brings you back to the river beneath the road. From there, logic becomes the boat, not the water, and you travel farther with less effort, guided by a current you no longer need to control. Beta trains you to believe that urgency equals importance. It stamps time with false scarcity and convinces you that the next microcorrection will finally make things safe. But safety is not the product of control, it is the precondition that lets control relax. Start by declaring sufficiency in the body. This breath is enough, this seat is enough, this moment is sufficient. Sufficiency is a biochemical signal. It downshifts sympathetic tone and lets the cortex sample wider priors. When enoughness lands, attention stops scavenging for threats and begins noticing invitations. Invitations look like small signals of ease, an exhale that wants to lengthen, a shoulder that wants to drop, an idea that wants to be tried before it is understood. Treat attention like a lens with adjustable focal length. Beta keeps it locked at telephoto, hunting for defects. Slide it to a wider focal length by sensing space, not objects, the room's volume, the space around your head, the distance to the far wall, the sky behind your closed eyes. Spatial sensing recruits parietal networks that naturally cohere in alpha. The brain quiets not because you forced it, but because you gave it a larger frame to organize. From this frame, problems shrink to their true size and patterns that were invisible at telephoto become obvious at wide angle. If thoughts race, let them finish their sprint. Imagine a track where each thought is allowed to cross the line without commentary. The finish line is the felt click of completion in the body, a softening in the diaphragm, a drop in the throat. Interrupting mid-lap keeps loops open, permitting completion closes tabs. When the field clears, introduce a single question shaped like a key rather than a demand. What would make this simple and beautiful? Beauty is a compression algorithm. It removes unnecessary complexity without violence. The brain recognizes it by resonance, not argument. Coherence loves rhythm. Build a daily cadence with 3 anchors: wake, midpoint, and dusk. Upon waking, before language boots fully, do 60 seconds of nasal breathing with a relaxed hum. Write the first image or sentence that arrives. Midpoint, when beta peaks, take a 5-minute open focus break. Feel the temperature of the hands, the space behind the back, the soundscape without names. At dusk, practice 3 rounds of 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. On the hold, feel gratitude as a body weight, not a thought. Gratitude is not performance, it is a proprioceptive cue that tells the system resources present, and alpha responds like a tide to a moon. When resistance shows up as lethargy, don't bully it, give it a different job. Ask lethargy to guard the threshold while curiosity walks past. This simple reframing recruits executive networks without raising arousal. Then take one micro-action that optimizes for momentum rather than magnitude. Rename the file, sketch 3 circles that represent the project's domains, record a 30-second voice note explaining the next step to your future self. Momentum is stateful. Once the system moves, it prefers not to stop. Alpha supplies the glide, beta later supplies the traction. Your environment is a silent collaborator. Arrange one corner of your space to embody the state you intend: fewer objects than usual, one living element, one texture that invites touch, one cue that signals wideband, a horizon photo, an open window, a clean desk edge. The brain encodes places as state triggers. Returning to the same coherent corner reduces the energy cost of transition. Add a scent you only use for creative dissent, rosemary, pine, or a simple unscented coolness, and let olfactory pathways escort you past language into pattern. Dialogue is a mirror of oscillations. When you feel yourself arguing to be right, pause and ask your voice to lower by 1 semitone and your speech to slow by 5%. The acoustics of coherence carry information before content does. your own auditory cortex hears you, and the vagus follows. Then ask the question that reopens possibility: what outcome would surprise us both with its simplicity? Surprising and simple is where alpha/theta solutions hide. They were obscured by the premise that harder equals truer. Practice soft targets. Instead of aiming to write the perfect paragraph, aim to write a paragraph that breathes. Instead of solving the entire architecture, solve the next join so that it clicks with minimal force. Soft targets remove the binary of success/failure and replace it with gradients of coherence. Gradients give the brain constant feedback: more of this, less of that. Over time, you accumulate a geometry of choices that points like an arrow toward the elegant whole. If anxiety spikes, label it precisely: high arousal plus negative valence plus narrow time window. Then invert one parameter at a time. First, widen the time window by imagining the same scene a year from now. The amygdala relaxes when time expands. Then flip valence by naming the skill this challenge is secretly training: discernment, patience, synthesis. Finally, lower arousal with breath and posture. Changing even one axis breaks the attractor state, changing all three lands you back in the field. The creative loop matures as trust replaces theatrics. You will notice that genuine insight arrives quietly, without fireworks, and that good work feels like alignment rather than conquest. You will notice that days with more silence produce fewer errors, and that generosity toward your own attention translates directly into generosity toward others. Most of all, you will notice that the future stops feeling like a wall to push and starts feeling like a conversation to join. Beta still has a seat at the table, but it no longer holds the gavel. The gavel belongs to coherence now, and coherence convenes the meeting where the unknown becomes familiar without being diminished. Precision without pressure is the signature of the creative nervous system. Aim for the feeling of a well-tuned instrument waiting for the first note, strings taut enough to sing, never so tight they snap. Let your breath be the luthier. For slow inhales that lift the ribs laterally, 8-count exhales that melt the back of the heart, then one natural pause where the body chooses stillness on its own. In that pause, invite the image of spaciousness: ocean before sunrise, a city before traffic, a field after rain. The brain indexes metaphors just like facts. When the metaphor is wide and quiet, networks align around it. Soon the mind becomes a lighthouse, sweeping gently, illuminating possibilities on each pass without interrogating them. Train attention to tolerate unfinishedness. Beta hates open loops, alpha can play with them. Write a single line that doesn't resolve and close the notebook. Sketch half a diagram and walk away. Leave one track of a song empty on purpose. This is not procrastination, it is controlled ambiguity that keeps the hippocampus curious and the prefrontal cortex respectful. While you rest or move, background consolidation stitches. When you return, the seam you were forcing appears as if it had been waiting behind a thin veil. Honor the veil, it lifts faster when you stop pulling. Use the body as a switchboard for state transitions. Warm the hands under water for 30 seconds to increase peripheral blood flow. More warmth at the fingertips correlates with lower sympathetic drive. Step outside for 2 minutes and let your gaze travel to 3 distances: near, mid, far, to reset accommodation and loosen cognitive grip. Chew slowly for 10 breaths before a session. Jaw rhythm feeds the vagus and quiets limbic alarms. Small, physical levers move large, cognitive gears. You are not escaping the mind, you are giving it better conditions to think beyond yesterday. Let intention become a frequency rather than a demand. Instead of, I must find the idea, choose, I stabilize the signal of clarity. Feel what clarity does to posture, breath, micro-movements of the eyes. Then audition next steps against that signal. If a step preserves clarity, you proceed. If it muddies, you pause. This is state-first execution, a reversal of the usual order. The psyche learns quickly that coherence is the gatekeeper, and the reward is speed without scramble. You begin to move like water finding level, quiet, persistent, precise. Practice micro-sabbaticals. 45 seconds with the device face down, eyes unfocused, awareness resting on the entire visual field. 90 seconds of standing with feet hip-width, knees unlocked, attention in the soles as if you were listening through them. 2 minutes of slow diaphragmatic breathing while repeating one quality word, ease, trust, spacious, lucid, on the exhale. These pockets of neutrality are not wasted time, they're the white space that makes the typography readable. Without white space, even good ideas feel loud. When you design, let subtraction be your primary tool. The nervous system recognizes elegance as lower metabolic cost. Remove the element that requires explanation. Remove the sentence that argues for itself. Remove the color that competes with the message. Each subtraction lowers cortical noise and raises signal-to-noise ratio until the idea becomes self-evident. Self-evident ideas travel farther because they carry their own instructions. Beta respects them because there's nothing left to manage. Transmute doubt into inquiry. Doubt says, what if this fails? Inquiry asks, what variable makes this click? Doubt contracts timelines and bodies, inquiry widens both. Write 3 levers for every project: constraint, amplification, simplification. Constraint, 1 rule that makes choices easier. Amplification, 1 element to turn up 10%. Simplification, 1 step you can delete with no loss of integrity. Tweak only 1 lever per session. The brain loves bounded experimentation, too many dials return you to control theater. Cultivate a ritual of closure that keeps beta from lingering. At the end of a session, name aloud 1 thing that worked, 1 thing to explore next, and 1 sensation you want to feel when you resume. Put the next step as the first line in your workspace. Close with 3 exhales longer than the inhales, then a slow blink to mark the state change. This telegraphs to the nervous system, we are safe to disengage. Safe endings buy you deeper beginnings tomorrow. Let sleep be your silent collaborator. 30 minutes before bed, dim the lights and treat the home as a cave. Give the pineal darkness so it gives you architecture. Write a single question you would love answered in images, not sentences. When you wake, capture the first fragment without judging grammar or logic. Fragments are fossils of nocturnal synthesis, arrange them later. Respect this partnership and you will notice that your mornings begin with orientation rather than panic. Finally, build a personal definition of mastery that prioritizes coherence over spectacle. Mastery is the capacity to enter and exit states on demand, to choose precision without pressure, to let logic serve vision and not the reverse. On good days, you will glide. On hard days, you will remember sooner. Remembering sooner is victory. Each time you release the clenched jaw of beta and widen into the field, you vote for a different future. Enough votes and the future obliges, not because you forced it, but because you finally matched it. Let attention learn to idle without stalling. An engine at optimal RPM is ready to accelerate, not revving itself to exhaustion. In neural terms, this is thalamocortical rhythm finding a smooth carrier wave so sensory input can be sampled without alarm. When you stop over-predicting threats, predictive coding relaxes its priors and lets novelty through with less cost. You can feel this as the moment when the room seems brighter and edges soften, not dissociation, but recalibration. The brain stops paying a tax to defend yesterday's model and frees energy for assembly and discovery. Use vision as a dial. High arousal tightens the pupils and increases saccade rate. Precision tasks need that briefly, not constantly. Practice softening gaze until you can hold an object and the space around it simultaneously. Alternate 20 seconds of panoramic vision with 10 seconds of crisp foveal focus, 3 rounds. This toggling teaches flexibility, beta for detail, alpha for field. Add a gentle, slower blink rate, each complete blink signals, no immediate threat, an autonomic tone follows the hint. These are tiny affordances for the state you want. Give language kinder physics. Beta tries to force outcomes with imperative verbs, coherent states prefer vector verbs, tend toward, lean into, allow for. A single preposition can flip state, work, through, instead of, against, breathe, into, not, away from. You are not tricking yourself, you are aligning semantics with physiology. Words carry micro-movements. When the sentence opens, the breath opens, and networks that fear constriction can contribute again. Court gamma honestly. Those brief, high-frequency bursts that mark insight arrive when slow rhythms scaffold them. Think of alpha/theta as rails and gamma as the train. If you chase trains without laying tracks, you get noise and self-judgment. Lay tracks with rhythmic breath, open focus, and clear intention expressed as feeling signature. Then forget about trains. Insight will pass on time more often than not when the rails are polished. Pair tasks with compatible states. Ideation prefers low to mid arousal, wide focus, generous time horizons. Editing prefers moderate arousal, narrower focus, shorter horizons. Don't ask the wrong state to do the right job. Schedule your day so state and task rhyme, morning edges for drafting and sensing, midday slices for decisions and cuts, late day recombination and review. Even 20-minute blocks with clean entrances and exits beat a marathon of mixed signals. Make uncertainty metabolizable. Uncertainty is not an enemy, it's data density you haven't chunked yet. Chunk it on purpose. Write the 3 most uncertain elements of your project. For each, define the smallest reversible test that would reduce uncertainty by 10%. Run one test in a protected alpha window, no notifications, wide gaze, slow breath. Reassess. Each reduction in uncertainty lowers limbic load and keeps you in creative bandwidth. Recruit the body's big switches. Light in the morning for 10 minutes outdoors tells the suprachiasmatic nucleus to anchor circadian phase. Anchored circadian rhythms make theta more accessible at night and alpha more stable by day. A brief, honest bout of physical effort, 90 seconds of stairs, 30 to 60 seconds of isometric hold, can discharge jittery catecholamines so they stop hijacking thought. Then transition with breath to keep from snapping back to high beta. Think of it as washing the nervous system, effort, rinse, ease. Practice non-sleep deep rest as a structural reset. 10 to 20 minutes of guided body scan or yoga nidra lets the default mode network decouple from rumination and recouple to integration. The gain you feel afterward is not mystical, it's a drop in cortical noise floor. On that quieter floor, subtle associations stand out like stars after city lights fade. Keep a pen nearby, trust fragments. Fragments are the honest currency of synthesis. Design meetings for oscillation. Begin with 2 minutes of collective breath coherence or silence where everyone looks away from screens and into space. State the desired feeling signature of the outcome, clear, kind, decisive, not just the deliverable. Hold contributions to crisp intervals, insert 30 seconds of quiet between topics to let networks settle. End by naming one subtraction each person will make this week to protect coherence. Groups can entrain chaos or order, choose order by rhythm, not by volume. Close the loop with a ritual that respects biology. Step away from the desk, look at a horizon if you can, and let the diaphragm drop on 3 long exhales. Name aloud one sentence that captures the work's essence today. Touch something cool, then warm, to bracket sensation and mark completion. The hippocampus loves such bookends, they stamp memory with clarity and tell the organism the hunt is paused. Over weeks, you'll notice that entry becomes immediate, one breath, one widening, one accurate word, and the state clicks. You'll notice that logic shows up later wearing gentler clothes, ready to refine rather than police. You'll notice that people feel safer around you, not because you've made yourself smaller, but because your signal is steady. This steadiness is the real power, not louder, but clearer, not faster, but truer. From here, control is replaced by conductance, You carry the frequency of what you intend, and the world quietly rearranges around a field that finally makes room for it. Treat choice as a wave function you can keep uncollapsed for a few breaths longer. When you rush, you force premature collapse into the most familiar option, usually the one your past prefers. When you pause inside the choice, you can sample multiple futures somatically before committing. Notice which option makes your breath longer, which makes your shoulders rise, which makes your gaze soften or sharpen. The body reads probability better than language when you give it time. Choose the path that leaves the most coherence in its wake, not the one that promises the quickest relief. Relief is beta's currency, coherence is creation's. Upgrade the quality of your questions until answers have no choice but to arrive. Poor questions demand effort, clean questions invite alignment. Instead of, "How do I fix this?" ask, "What is the minimum elegant move that unlocks the system?" Instead of, "Why is this so hard?" ask, "Where am I overspecifying?" Overspecification is hidden control, too many constraints starve emergence. Loosen one constraint at a time and remeasure the field. You'll feel the moment the system crosses from jam to fluid, the signal is ease spreading from breath to peripheral vision. Practice temporal dilation on purpose. Beta compresses time into a narrow now where everything is urgent. Deliberately widen the window by imagining the same scene at 3 scales, this hour, this season, this decade. Ask what remains true across all 3. Actions that survive multiple scales are almost always the right ones. You'll notice that many urgent moves evaporate when viewed from a season, while a few small, patient moves become obvious and durable. Act from the season, execute in the hour. Make your inner voice an instrument you can tune. Read a paragraph aloud at half speed, allowing micropauses at commas and a full breath at periods. Then read the same paragraph silently at the same cadence. The subvocal system learns the new tempo and drags thought toward it. Slow inner speech is not laziness, it's acoustic gating for cognition. With practice, you'll notice spikes of anxiety trying to accelerate the tempo, meet them with longer exhales and one precise phrase, "We have time to do this right." Truth calms physiology, pretense does not. Let curiosity become your dominant neuromodulator. Dopamine is not just about reward, it's about the promise of meaningful discovery. Prime it by setting tiny, clear novelty targets, one new reference image, one counterexample to your current thesis, one constraint you've never tried. Celebrate detection, not perfection. Detection tells the midbrain that the world is rich and that attention pays. As curiosity rises, betas need to clamp down diminishes because the organism reads the environment as opportunity-dense rather than threat-dense. Create a clean handshake between solitude and collaboration. Before you meet, distill your thinking into a single-page sketch, shapes, arrows, 3 labels max. Bring questions shaped like levers, not like burdens. If we had to ship this with one feature, which one carries the soul? In the room, guard state first, equalize breath, widen gaze, declare the feeling signature of success. Only then touch the problem. You will save hours of debate by stabilizing physiology for 5 minutes. Groups don't just trade ideas, they trade rhythms. Install a friction floor for your tools and environment. Put the 3 most used resources within arm's reach and everything else one level harder to get. Turn off one notification source per week until the baseline is quiet. Use a single-pane workspace with generous margins. The eye appreciates white space, and so does your working memory. When friction rises, creativity pays a tax. When friction falls too low, distraction leaks in. A smart floor keeps you in the channel where effort feels clean and attention glides. Learn the micro skill of ending on a win. Stop a session right after a small success, not after a struggle. Write the next sentence as a stub and leave it visible. The brain will itch to complete it, that itch is your ally tomorrow. Ending on a win conditions the nervous system to expect satisfying returns from the creative state, and it will usher you back there faster. Ending on frustration trains avoidance. The content is the same, the exit imprint is different, and the imprint drives tomorrow's entrance. When fear argues for control, give it a narrower job. Ask fear to guard integrity while you explore possibility. Name the single non-negotiable: truth, safety, kindness, and let fear monitor just that, not everything. This reframing converts fear from an executive tyrant to a trusted sentinel. You'll feel the shift as your breath returns to the belly and your hands warm. A sentinel doesn't shout, it watches. With someone watching the gate, creativity plays farther from the castle. Let your practice be devotional without becoming superstitious. You are not begging the universe, you are training a system to recognize and reproduce coherence. Keep a brief log that tracks only state and result: pre-state, tense/neutral/open, intervention, breath/open focus/movement, post-state, outcome quality. Patterns will surface quickly. When you see that open coherent effective repeats across domains, a quiet confidence replaces bargaining. Confidence is not volume, it is signal purity. From there, you'll notice that the field responds most to the you that is already aligned, already listening, already moving with precision and no pressure, the you that doesn't need to control because you've learned to conduct. Design your day like a waveform you can surf. Start with a gentle ramp, not a spike, 10 quiet minutes where you do nothing but let breath lengthen and gaze widen. Protect a mid-morning block for generative work when alpha is naturally available after sleep pressure fades. Use a short, focused sprint at midday for decisions and edits when beta can be precise without bullying. Close with an evening descent, dim light, slow breath, low language, so theta can knit. You are composing state changes, not hoping for them. Rhythm becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure makes inspiration repeatable. Work with precision cues that the brain can't ignore. Temperature: a cool splash on the face activates the trigeminal dive reflex and nudges parasympathetic tone, follow with warm hands to invite vascular relaxation. Pressure: place one palm on the sternum, one on the navel, hold lightly until you feel the top hand lower and the bottom hand rise, diaphragm re-engaged, vagal afferent soothed. Sound: hum a single note on the exhale until the chest resonates, vibration entrains breath and steadies the heart. 3 levers, 90 seconds, measurable shift. Make attention multisensory so it can't snap back to narrow. Pair visual spaciousness with tactile anchoring, feel the chair's edges or the floor's grain while gazing softly into the room. Pair auditory openness with interoception, listen to the farthest sound while noticing heartbeat's faint tide without chasing it. Cross-linking senses recruits distributed networks and lowers the chance that one anxious circuit drags the rest into high beta. You are teaching the system breadth with ballast. Turn intention into a scaffold of constraints that liberate, not choke. Define one rule per session, one verb, one audience, one metaphor. Reveal, mentor a curious beginner, polish the lens. Then let everything else be provisional. The constraint holds the center so exploration can range. If you feel tightening, the rule got too small, widen it one step and remeasure your breath. The right constraint makes the next move obvious by removing 90 wrong ones without drama. Train recovery, not just entry. When interruptions yank you to narrow, run a 3-2-1 reset, 3 panoramic breaths with long exhales, 2 sensory anchors, temperature of hands, weight of feet, 1 sentence that restores vector, move toward clarity. Don't judge the derail, rehearse the return. The nervous system memorizes the path back faster than it memorizes the content you were on. Fast returns compound into long coherence. Use writing as a biofeedback device. Draft at the cadence of your breath, type only on the exhale for 1 paragraph. The result will feel unforced because it was literally breathed out. For analytic passes, reverse the pattern, brief inhales as you scan, micropauses to decide, clean keystrokes to cut. When text snags, check your respiration first, tangled sentences echo shallow breath. Fix physiology, then fix prose. Institute a ritual of pre-commitment that keeps control honest. Before opening the hard task, say out loud, "For the next 20 minutes, I choose state over speed." Start a timer. If urgency barges in, name it, breathe once, and return. At the bell, stop, even if you're flying. This teaches the organism that coherence is sovereign and that you won't trade it for adrenaline spikes. Paradoxically, velocity increases because you no longer burn fuel fighting yourself. Let images carry instruction without words. Imagine a camera pulling focus from a single twig to the forest, feel your cortex following. Picture a river moving around a rock rather than trying to shove it, feel your strategy adapt. See a dimmer knob rather than a switch, set arousal to 6 for editing, for visioning. The brain obeys pictures faster than paragraphs. Keep a small lexicon of images that instantly move you from grip to glide. When collaboration threatens to tilt you back into beta, lead with state synchronization. 2 minutes of silence with eyes half closed, a shared 5-breath cadence, then 1 round where each person names the quality they will protect: clarity, kindness, brevity. Only then touch the agenda. If tension rises, pause, widen gaze collectively, and remove one variable from the problem. Groups often add complexity to prove effort, remove to prove wisdom. Finally, measure progress by latency to coherence, not hours logged. How quickly can you soften the jaw, widen the field, lengthen the exhale, and feel the mind re-enter wideband? How gently can you hand the baton from vision to logic without bruising the idea? How reliably can you stop while still coherent so tomorrow begins ahead? This is mastery in practice: fewer spikes, cleaner curves, decisions that feel inevitable because they were selected from a generous field rather than squeezed from a clenched one. Keep voting for that field with breath, posture, rhythm, and language, and the brain will repay you with a future that arrives already aligned. Treat stress like wind over an instrument: too weak and the tone dies, too strong and it screeches, tuned correctly, it sings. You tune by modulating input, not by pretending the wind isn't there. When pressure rises, don't reach for more thinking, reach for better signal. 1 minute of nasal box breathing, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, stabilizes CO2, smooths cortical excitability, and returns you to wideband reception. Then ask a precision prompt that fits the state: what single move would make the rest easier or unnecessary? When the answer feels like the body exhaling, you found the path of least resistance that still respects reality. Build micro-rituals that mark state transitions so clearly your nervous system can't miss them. Before deep work, 3 slow exhales through pursed lips, gaze to the horizon, palms open on the desk. Before collaboration, 1 shared minute of quiet, then each person names a quality over a metric: clarity over speed, kindness over cleverness. Before rest, dim light, slow cadence speech, screens out of reach, 1 page of paper to empty pending loops. These are not quirks, they are flags your biology recognizes. The brain loves consistent openings and clean endings because they remove ambiguity, and ambiguity is the hidden tax that keeps you stuck in beta. Put your goals on a 2-axis grid: state fidelity and task progress. Most people only track progress and then wonder why they burn out or plateau. State fidelity is simple: did I maintain coherence while acting? Score it honestly, even if progress was high. Over a week, you'll see the compound returns of coherent action: fewer redos, cleaner decisions, faster recovery after setbacks. Progress without coherence is expensive, coherence without progress is rehearsal. The sweet spot is both, repeatedly, until it feels normal. Let movement become a language for your cortex. When stuck, do 60 seconds of cross crawls, right elbow to left elbow to right knee, without rushing. This diagonally couples hemispheres, warms the midline, and gives the cerebellum fresh error signals to refine. Follow with a slow spinal wave from tailbone to crown. You're not stretching for flexibility, you're sending proprioceptive data that updates internal models. Updated models quiet prediction errors, and quiet prediction errors free bandwidth for new patterns. Guard the inputs that shape your oscillations. Light, sound, cadence of conversation, even the typography you stare at, each is a tuning fork. Choose brighter mornings and softer nights so circadian anchors hold. Choose music with clear rhythm but sparse intrusion when you need breadth, silence when you need exactness. Choose fewer, cleaner words on your screen so the eye can rest between lines. Every small reduction in noise is an invitation for alpha to settle and for theta to bridge. The result isn't fragility, it's precision. Practice deliberate incompletion when you close a session. Write the first sentence of tomorrow's work and stop midline. Sketch the outline and leave one box empty on purpose. Place the tool you'll need first in the exact position your hand will search for it. This is collaborative conditioning with your future self. Overnight, consolidation processes will fill the gap. In the morning, you meet momentum instead of resistance. Beta respects momentum, it relaxes when it senses a clear on-ramp. Rehearse future stress and low stakes so the pattern is available when it counts. Pick a minor inconvenience, a slow cue, a glitchy file, and run the protocol: widen gaze, lengthen exhale, soften jaw, choose one accurate sentence over 5 reactive ones. Stamp the victory with a tiny physical anchor, like pressing thumb to middle finger. Later, under real pressure, fire the same sequence and watch your system choose conductance over control. You are not eliminating adrenaline, you are teaching it to flow in channels that serve you. Use questions as state keys. What would this look like if it were elegant? Where is the unnecessary friction? What can be removed with no loss of truth? Who would do this lightly? Each question biases the network toward subtraction, pattern recognition, and modeling from exemplars rather than grinding. Ask them out loud, sound organizes attention. Then listen for the answer in sensation first. If the breath lengthens and the neck releases, proceed. If your field narrows, you're back in grip, reset the state before you move. Let integrity be the only non-negotiable constraint. Promise yourself you won't trade truth for tempo. Paradoxically, when you make that vow somatic, felt in posture and breath, not just believed, tempo increases, because you stop paying for rework and apology. You speak fewer words, each with more charge. You make fewer moves, each with more leverage. People trust your signal because it stays stable across contexts. Stable signals shorten negotiations, quiet rooms, and open doors that noise keeps closed. Over time, mastery feels less like effort and more like orientation. Entry is a blink, jaw softens, gaze widens, breath deepens, language becomes precise, and the mind slides to the rail where insight runs. Work is a series of small, kind selections that accumulate into inevitability. When you finish, there is no hero story, only a clean curve from intention to outcome. That curve is reproducible because it lives in your body now. You didn't abandon logic, you gave it better physics. You didn't conquer beta, you hired it at the right hour. And you didn't force the future, you matched it, one coherent breath at a time. Build tolerance for silence until silence becomes intelligence. In the beginning it will feel like nothing is happening, no fireworks, no thunderclap of insight, only the soft sound of respiration and the small creaks of a room. Stay anyway. Beneath the threshold of impatience, microsynchronies begin, respiration entrains heart rhythm, vagal tone steadies cortical gain, and the thalamus stops flooding the cortex with novelty flags. When the alarms quiet, pattern detectors that were drowned out by noise rise above the surface. The mind is not empty, it is coherent enough to distinguish a true signal from the static of habit. Let sensation be your compass rather than commentary. Commentary will always arrive on time with opinions, sensation arrives with evidence. Scan the body for low-friction vectors. Where does the breath move most easily, which joint feels unguarded, which thought makes the tongue release and the eyes soften? Choose action along those vectors. This is not laziness, it is minimum energy routing through a complex system. Biology respects efficiency. When you pick the path the organism already wants to take, momentum appears and effort feels like glide rather than grind. Design your inputs like a lab protocol. If you need ideation, give the system diffuse light, wide visual fields, and low linguistic density, few words, large margins, images that imply motion. If you need precision, narrow the field, sharpen contrast, and reduce auditory complexity to near silence. The brain is state-dependent hardware, it responds to constraints more reliably than to pep talks. Build the room that makes the next move obvious and your willpower becomes surplus inventory. Practice constraint stacking to jailbreak control without chaos. Choose one temporal constraint, 20 clean minutes, one qualitative constraint, elegant over exhaustive, and one structural constraint, 3 beats only. Start. When resistance spikes, change only one constraint, extend time by 5 minutes, or swap elegant for playful, or move from 3 beats to 2. This disciplined toggling keeps exploration inside guardrails and prevents beta from declaring a mutiny. The surprise is that tight, kind constraints create more freedom than no constraints ever did. Teach yourself to recognize the somatic signature of premature certainty. It feels like a forward head, a held breath, a narrowed gaze, and a sentence that begins with obviously. When you catch it, stop mid-syllable, swallow once, inhale through the nose, and soften the knees. Ask a better question: what would I notice if I were wrong in an interesting way? Interesting error unlocks discovery, defended correctness recycles the past. The nervous system can learn to enjoy being surprised when safety is present. Give it safety first, then aim for useful surprise. Run microsimulations instead of arguments. Sketch 2 or 3 options as tiny prototypes, a paragraph each, a 30-second audio note, a napkin diagram, and test their feel against your intention's frequency. Which prototype expands breath, which sharpens eyes, which settles the neck? Choose the one with the best physiology and only then invite logic to strengthen it. In complex systems, embodied validation precedes analytic proof. Your body is a better early warning system than your rhetoric. Treat endings as art forms. A clean end preserves coherence and protects tomorrow. Close by renaming the work in one precise sentence that captures its essence, not its scope. Note one subtraction you will make next time. Then create a physical cue, a card on the keyboard, a pen angled toward the first line, a file named with the next action in imperative form. This is how you turn intention into an attractor basin. The system falls back into flow because you left gravity switched on. Build a repertoire of instant resets that you can deploy invisibly anywhere. Tongue to palate with wide gaze while listening. 4-count inhale through the nose, 8-count silent hum through closed lips. Micro-release of the pelvic floor on exhale to invite the diaphragm to descend. Heel-to-toe weight shift under a conference table to reawaken proprioception. Each is a small hinge that swings a big door, from high beta vigilance to workable alpha in under a minute, without announcing your process to the room. When you lead others, lead rhythm first, narrative second. Start a meeting with 60 seconds of shared breath or even a simple instruction: look at a far point in the room and breathe out longer than you breathe in. Then ask a single question that defines quality: what outcome would be generous to future us? Generosity changes the cost function inside every brain present. Decisions become less about personal victory and more about global coherence. You will leave with fewer words, clearer actions, and nervous systems that can re-enter deep work without a long runway. Remember that mastery is not the absence of spikes, it is the speed and kindness of your returns. Spikes will come, deadlines, surprises, human mess. Your practice is to notice the clamp, widen the field, lengthen the exhale, and relight curiosity in seconds rather than hours. Every swift, gentle return rewires expectation. The body begins to assume that coherence is available on demand. From that assumption, control finally relaxes into conductance, and creation stops being an accident of mood and becomes the quiet, repeatable consequence of how you breathe, look, ask, and move. Let intuition graduate from hunch to instrument. A hunch is an unlabeled pattern your cortex can't yet verbalize. An instrument is a trained sensitivity you can reproduce. Calibrate it with 2 moves: remove noise, then test resonance. Remove noise by dropping arousal with 3 slow exhales, smoothing visual input with a softened gaze, and simplifying the question to a single quality. Test resonance by sampling microactions and observing physiology. The right move lowers shoulder tone, lengthens breath, and widens vision within seconds. When the body agrees, the idea is carrying signal, not just novelty. Give your memory a better filing system by encoding state with content. While drafting, anchor 1 sensory tag per concept: temperature of the mug, texture under your palms, a faint sound in the room. Later, recall the tag and the concept returns with it. This is intentional context reinstatement. Hippocampal maps light up faster when the retrieval state resembles the encoding state. You turn study into choreography, not struggle, and the information arrives unforced because it rides on a familiar bodily rhythm. Master the hinge moments, the 5 seconds between stimulus and habit. In that gap, establish a micro-protocol: jaw soften, tongue to palate, eyes to horizon, exhale twice as long as the inhale, silently name the quality you're protecting. Quality precedes content. Protect clarity, kindness, or elegance, and your next sentence will inherit the shape. Repeat this enough and the hinge becomes automatic. You won't remember to be mindful, you'll just pivot cleanly because the nervous system likes the lower cost of coherence. Use subtraction as a creativity amplifier. Most blockages are not from too few ideas but from too many unranked constraints. List them, then cross out one that does not safeguard truth or safety. Instantly the field opens. If nothing moves, remove 1 more. Creativity is the remainder after unnecessary control is cancelled. The result feels like a hallway suddenly getting brighter because you took your hand off the dimmer you forgot you were gripping. Practice asymmetric effort, light touch, precise leverage. Instead of pushing for hours, locate the fulcrum. In writing, the fulcrum might be the key metaphor. In design, the negative space. In conversation, the question that dissolves defensiveness. Find it by asking, where is the load-bearing simplicity? Simplicity is not smallness, it is an accurate reduction that preserves essence. When you hit it, systems reorganize with minimal force and progress looks suspiciously like ease. Let nonlinearity be an ally. Insight rarely scales with time spent, it scales with state quality and question clarity. 10 coherent minutes can replace 2 incoherent hours. Structure your day in pulses, 90 to 120 minutes of deep work, then a true reset. During the reset, touch light, air, and distance, let eyes travel to far horizons, let breath fall into your pelvic bowl. This undoes the tunnel that beta builds and reopens the panoramic circuits that make synthesis possible. Build a small library of state phrases that never miss. Make room when you feel crowded. Go wider when you fixate. Less force, more accuracy when you tense. Subtract to reveal when you're lost in options. Say the phrase on the exhale and mean it physically. Language tied to breath becomes instruction, not slogan. The body follows what it can feel. Treat disagreement as an opportunity to cohere, not to conquer. First synchronize physiology, lower voice, slower cadence, wider gaze. Then mirror essence, it sounds like you're protecting X. Once essence is seen, introduce a shared quality target. What outcome would be both true and kind? Qualities shift cost functions, people stop optimizing for winning and start optimizing for coherence. Solutions that were invisible under adrenaline appear under safety. Engineer your environment for instant entry. A single clean surface with generous margins, one tactile object that signals calm, light angle to reduce glare, and a chair that invites upright ease. Keep one wideband soundtrack or reliable silence. Keep a blank card where the next intention is always written in 7 words or fewer. When friction disappears, willpower stops being the bottleneck. You slide in, not gear grind. End every session with a state receipt. 2 lines, what you did, and how you felt while doing it. Over time, you'll see the correlation emerge. When breath was long and vision wide, output quality spiked. When jaw was tight and gaze tunneled, rework followed. This is not superstition, it's systems theory wearing human clothes. You become a scientist of your own field, running the only experiment that matters, which conditions reliably produce coherent creation. Let this be your quiet vow, choose conductance over control. Control tries to force electricity through a kinked wire, conductance unkinks the wire and lets charge move. Each exhale unkinks. Each widening unkinks. Each precise, kind question unkinks. Do this often enough and the signal you send, clear, generous, inevitable, meets a world that is waiting to resonate. Creation stops feeling like a siege and starts feeling like alignment discovered on purpose. Let practice become architecture rather than mood. Moods are weather, architecture is climate. Build structures that keep coherence probable even when the day is messy, a single morning cue that never changes, a short midday reset that never negotiates, an evening descent that signals closure. When architecture is in place, you don't wonder whether you'll find the state, you step onto rails already laid. Rails don't remove freedom, they remove needless friction so freedom can go farther. Cultivate precision gratitude, the kind that registers as weight in the body instead of slogans in the mouth. Name one specific sufficiency and feel where it lands, the way the chair holds your hips, the way air reaches the back of the throat, the way light lifts the eyes. Specificity turns chemistry, oxytocin and serotonin nudge the amygdala off its post and the cortex stops policing the moment. From there, attention grows generous again, and generosity widens the search space where answers hide. When the mind insists on certainty, give it range instead. Range is permission to hold 2 possible maps without panic. Practice with small puzzles, sketch an elegant solution and a playful one, and keep both alive for 5 breaths. Watch the body for the tell. If breath shortens and shoulders creep, you collapsed the wave too soon. If breath stays long and gaze stays broad, you're surfing superposition, 2 futures sampled without debt. Range today becomes graceful decisiveness tomorrow. Treat mistakes as directional beacons, not verdicts. A mistake is the nervous system saying, your model is too small. Respond by widening the frame, add a missing constraint or subtract an unnecessary one. Ask, what part of this error is beautiful? Beauty here means information density with minimal waste. When you extract the beautiful part, the rest of the error dissolves. The organism learns that exploration is safe and that feedback is a friend with an odd voice. Use timeboxing as mercy, not pressure. A 20-minute bell is a kindness that keeps beta from bargaining and keeps theta from drifting into sleep. Inside the box, you owe only fidelity to state and one honest attempt. When the bell rings, stop. Ending clean teaches the body that coherence will not be exploited. The next box opens with eagerness rather than dread because you kept the covenant. Practice vocal hygiene for thought. Speak less, slower, and lower when stakes rise. Record 2 minutes of your own coherent cadence and use it as a tuning fork before high-friction moments. The ear drags the breath drags the brain. If you must deliver hard news or negotiate tight constraints, begin with a single sentence shaped like care for the system rather than defense of the self. Systems respond to stewardship, defenses breed counter-defenses. Let tools reflect your state. Choose pens that glide, fonts with generous X height, editors that hide clutter. Keep only 2 palettes, one for visioning with wide margins and images, one for editing with clear grids and sparse color. Switching palettes signals the nervous system that a different network is in charge. State-matched tools stop you from asking a hammer to compose a sonata. Install thresholds in space. A doorway becomes a breath, a chair becomes an intention, a window becomes a widening. Each crossing is a prompt to drop the jaw, lengthen the exhale, and choose the next quality before the next task. Thresholds punctuate the day with small returns to coherence so spikes never accumulate into hurricanes. Hold ambition like a lantern, not a whip. The lantern illuminates a radius just large enough for the next right step while keeping the horizon visible. The whip demands leaps that sever state from action. Ask your ambition to specify light, not speed. What radius of clarity do I need to move gracefully? When the radius is right, you move steadily, and steady beats heroic in every long game that matters. Remember the oldest skill, noticing. Noticing precedes improvement, noticing is the improvement. Notice the microsecond when the jaw clenches and soften it. Notice the blink that stalls and complete it. Notice the breath that shortens and lengthen it. Each correction is a vote for the world you are building inside your body, a world where control retires from panic and returns as craftsmanship, where logic is a trusted finisher rather than a frightened guard, where the quantum field is not an abstraction but a daily experience of possibility organizing itself around a clear, generous signal. Keep choosing that signal. Keep unkinking the wire. Keep letting precision arise without pressure. Coherence will do the rest.